Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the new season of Innovation Café. I've seen some new faces here. For some of you who haven't been here before, we are a weekly networking event where we offer a platform for subjects on tech and design. And tonight we have a collaboration with Dutch Design Foundation. What If Labs will talk a little bit more about what they do in collaboration with them. And Anne Ligtenberg has been offered as a presenter tonight by them, and she will tell us more about how we can reconnect with different generations. So I wish you all a nice evening.
Hello, good evening. Familiar faces. Hi, Hans. Great that you're here. Just to tell you a little bit of what we do as What If Lab. We're part of Dutch Design Foundation. You probably know us well from the Dutch Design Week, which is here every year, coming October as well. To find out which way to point. Thank you. So What If Lab is one of the programs of Dutch Design Foundation, and we call it a platform, but it's a place where we make connections. And we really want to facilitate designers. We do that in all our programs, but in the lab it's to get long-lasting partnerships between designers and design studios and organizations that have complex questions. And we found out that designers are really good in their methodology on working on these questions. But to get this process started, sometimes it can use a little kickstart, because the world of designers and of these bigger organizations can lay apart. So that's actually what we do in the lab. And the most important thing, I think, that designers do in this collaboration is asking questions. And they're, in my experience, really good at it. And they think less in facts and more in possibilities. And the world we collaborate with, they are really used to thinking in those facts. And in that way, by organizing these programs where we have the opportunity to start up collaborations, long-lasting partnership, to have already a fee in place, we give designers and organizations the possibility to really dive into what they are working on. So tonight we asked, we really want to, in that way, make a shift and change in these societal questions. So tonight we asked Anne Ligtenberg to tell her story about some of the projects she has done. And one of the projects she recently finished, she will tell about as well. It's by an organization called Actiz, and it's really thinking about what are we going to do for the elderly care in the future, because we know that the amount of people that are going to be elderly is growing so rapidly, and we cannot do it in the same way as we are doing now. So they really asked the designers, please help us to think in different ways about this question. So Anne, can I invite you here and have a good evening?
Thank you. Just to check, can everybody hear me like this? Perfect. Okay. Thank you. And first of all, good evening. Thank you for the introduction, Dries. Yeah, first of all, I think for me as a designer, it's actually extremely helpful that the What If Labs are running. Because when I graduated from the Design Academy, I really wanted to work more in the social realm. And I wanted not to start my own company. But at that time, there weren't really companies who were working in that field. And then you were trained at the Design Academy to think about more social and more global problems. But then most of the design studios still were making more traditional design. And actually, so I had to start up my own company. And at that point, also the conversations about placing design in different fields became even stronger and stronger. And then at some point also the What If Lab started, and that was actually for me and for probably a whole group of my generation really, really important. So today, actually the question that we built the whole project on, that we did with Actiz within the What If Lab, was what do you want to be when you are old? Of course, when you are a child, you ask somebody what he wants to become when he grows up. And then we figured we as a society actually also need to start planning what we want to do when we grow older. Not because we need to, but because we can. And it's a silly thing, because if you start to ask people about what they want to do after they stopped working, a lot of them think, I'm first going to go on a really big holiday, and then I'm going to spend a lot of time with my grandchildren, even if they don't have any children for their own. That's just the idea that we have from when we are 70 and older. And we figured, okay, that's not something that, well, is actually good or a positive thing, because it's also something you can probably only do for maybe 2, 3, 4 years, but then you still have the rest of your time when you're older. But to do a little step back, now it's my turn to do this. Okay. It worked with you, Dries, so I have to... Yes, oh, yes. So to do a step back, I'm Anne Ligtenberg and I work together with Mats. He's not here today, but we work together within the studio, and then we have a small team who's working with us. But as you can see, we're from the same age. So we had the problem that we needed to think about how people were going to live when they were older, and I'm 34 at the moment, so it's not really in my near future, but still, you can never start planning soon enough. Yes. So the question that we got from the What If Lab was, how do we facilitate an active existence for the elderly in society where reciprocity, sorry, I'm always bad with that word, between generations is the default or the norm. And that question is really big. And of course, that's also part of the charm of the What If Labs, that it is a really big question that a lot of designers can find their own angle to work with. But actually, within the first application that we wrote, I think we also wrote that we can't answer this question. Because it's such a big one and such an interesting one and such a question that touches on so many different aspects of systems that we created as a society, that as a designer you also feel kind of hopeless within this whole frame of what everybody is doing. Good evening. So also the first time that we spoke actually with the people that were connected to Actiz and also the chairmen of the elderly houses, they also started to talk about how pensions should work, how high we could pay for healthcare, like all these enormous questions. And it actually took us also quite a while to bring it back to a very human scale. Because I think that as a designer, that's something you can do or can play with. And you can change a system, you can change the structure, but then also the people that are within this system and structure, they need to be also adapt and change their behavior a bit, or start to think about some topics a bit differently, or start to ask questions that they wouldn't ask themselves. So that's actually also what we try to focus on within the project. Or actually that became the whole main goal of the project. And then we figured, okay, do we actually have role models? Do we actually have people that we can compare ourselves with? Because just to check in, does any of you know how your regular Tuesday is going to look like when you are like, let's say, 78 years old? Or 84? Or maybe you touch a 92? Those are like, especially the last two, those are things that people don't really think about. But also people that you don't really know, who have that age, who have a life that you think of, that's a life I would also like. Because at some point they kind of drop off our radars. Then you have your own grandparents, but the biggest skill people have the feeling when they bring their parent or grandparent to an elderly home, this is definitely not a place that I would like to live. Which is of course really strange, but that's the only place that we have at the moment. So you try to care, but at the same time also, my grandpa now is 97. He's still quite healthy. He's still very stubborn. He still lives on his own, but he lives in Duurlo. And my parents live in Arnhem, so that's already a bit closer. Then my uncle lives in Turkey, so there's no way that he can play a role. Then my brother lives in Amsterdam, and my nephew lives in in Zaanstad. So that's quite far. But we're a very normal family. So every time something happens, we need to travel. And when you're 97, also your friends are less present or they have the same problems. And of course, he is a very extreme version because he's 97. But at the other hand, he's an older person living at home, far away from their families. So on one side, we don't really have role models. On the other side, we care very much for our family, but we move further and further away. And he's not trained, and we're not really trained to also use all the other social network or people around him in a way that we feel that we can ask them also to care for him, except healthcare systems. But they don't have the people as well. So this was kind of the problem that we had with all of us. Like, this is the problem we collectively have. So on one hand, we figured, okay, we can present role models. That's something we can do. As a designer, you can make a story, you can give somebody a face, you can present somebody, but that's not enough. So let's not only do that, let's also then try to train us. Not only train my grandpa, but also train us, because we need to be able to care, we need to be able to plan, we need to be able to, well. And by training us, we, Mats and me, also already, well, at least try to do this a little bit within other projects. One of them is U2, and that project is about the care of people who were sexually abused, which is also a topic that people don't like to talk about, and also a topic that people have very personal stories of. And another one that we did before that, yes, is the dyslexia book. That was a follow-up from my graduation. And within this project, we actually limited ourselves to only talk about how a dyslexic person experienced their own dyslexia. Not how to solve it, not how to fix it, not how do you then need to learn, how do you need to do all the steps that might fix it, but first let's just talk about what it actually is. And see if we can manage that the person who has dyslexia can reflect and see themselves, and the person who doesn't see what somebody else experienced, so that you can have a little bit of a base of the same knowledge, and then actually you give people more tools to then start to figure it out for themselves. How they want to be helped or how they can help somebody else. So with these two projects in mind, we also started to look at, well, this major problem that we created for ourselves within elderly care. I want the next one. Yes. So, like I said, we could make role models. So we figured, okay, let's then place ourselves in somebody else's shoes. So I want to introduce Murat, Els, Lisa, and Isaac. There are 4 of our 16 main characters in the game that we designed. Murat is a former economics man, and he loves gardening. But in some seasons, he has just way too many vegetables to eat on his own. So he needs to share them. Then Els was a former journalist, and now she works at the library. And she has 2 children who are very busy. So even though she knows she's a little bit on the older side, still there are 3 grandchildren every Wednesday running around in her house. And then we have Lisa. Lisa always had a shop together with her friend, where she where she would like to dress women, and now she doesn't have to shop anymore because, of course, She has her pension now, but she figured, okay, I'm just gonna write a small piece every month in the neighborhood newspaper about how you can dress fantastic when you're 80. And Isaac, I have to check. I think Isaac is now is a former radio pirate, if I remember correctly. But since radio is not really a thing anymore, and he knows a bit about technology, he figured, okay, podcast, it is a bit the same, so let's see where I can get with that. So these 4 beautiful people are a small sum out of the collection of the people that we created within the game. Because we figured if we want people to talk about a subject that they don't really like to talk about, we at least need to make it fun. A little bit, not too much, but just a little bit. And then you need to also make it a little bit competitive, because if it's only a talking game, then it's not fun anymore. So we played actually with all the urges in ourselves that bring a little bit the inner child up, and put that next to the topic of then elderly care and becoming older and knowing what you want to do. So the game exists that you play as one of those 16 people, maybe one of those lovely 4 people that I just introduced. And you're thinking about how very daily life challenges could maybe be solved between each other or with other contacts that you have. Because now I come back to then my grandpa, who lives still in Ruurlo with a very small social network around him. And that's also because he isn't trained to really ask for help. Because we're really trained in fixing our problems ourselves, or only asking how to solve them from our nearest and dearest. But like I said, we live far away. So there are all these small things that happen that we now try to solve or bury or ignore, and those things actually exist for quite a long time, and we can make our lives easier. But that means that we need to care a bit more for people that we don't know. And we also need to care a bit more for people that might ask us a question, even if they don't really dare to. And then you come also to the conversation, like how many people do I actually know that are from different generations from me? Like I said, Mats and me are exactly the same age. Then we have 4 people at our studio. They're like 7 till 10 years younger than we are, and that's it. That's not a very strong intergenerational network. So that's why within this game, with trying to point out very daily life problems, and also people that are not even your friends, but are around you, and try to present them also as people where you could ask a question to. We ask the players of the game to figure out, okay, can you solve these challenges? Are you able to collectively to talk about how you can solve small daily life things from each other, how you can help them out, how you can maybe introduce somebody of your network to somebody else. And meanwhile, while people are playing this, a lot of the times personal stories come up. Like, are you allowed to ask Erik of 29, who just has moved into the street with his dog, Ducky, and is very busy renovating his house, to help you within the garden? Like, he's busy, you barely know him. Is that something you can ask for, yes or no? If you have too many food, like Murat has, this guy is very busy. So maybe he wants something from you. That's something you could offer. So are there things you could offer, or you could think about, or are those people able to get a place within your social realm that live very close by and that you might need in the future, or that you might need right now? Because just when you have an important doctor's appointment, the kids are too busy and you would like someone to be there to listen in. Who can you ask? I wouldn't ask Erik for help, because he's too far away and I don't really know him and everything is different. But maybe Kim, a good friend who always drives with you to the cooking club, is an option, because I do something for her. So is that an option to ask her to maybe help me out at some point? This is a way of thinking, of course, that is very ideally, but it's also something that's very new to a lot of us, actually. And I think by trying to play this game and trying to figure out what can I ask from who and how can we manage to make problems smaller. Because going back to the first question, we didn't think about how pensions should work. We didn't make healthcare cheaper, like we didn't make extra places in elderly homes, but maybe if we all collectively start to think in this way, we could live a bit more peaceful longer at home. And I think we will have to, if we want to or not, with the current system that we have. So now, yes, we have played the game a lot, which is really nice, because then we go back to the What If Lab. Because you work already together with the organization while doing this project and while figuring out all these topics, you can test it with them. And that's a luxury that you normally don't really have as a designer, especially when you do a more independent project. So we did this now with friends, we did this with family, we did this with people from over 80, we did this in a really small town in Limburg, we did this in an elderly house in Amsterdam, we did this now on several different locations. We did this actually also with people who work within elderly care. Those are the really most interesting sessions that we have. And then we have to check in, does it work? Because the game testing worked out, but that's not really what you want as a designer. You want not the product to work and to look nice, but you also want it out there and that people are then actually using it. So we as a practice started to build in ourselves, how can we kind of map out how this goes? So when we first proposed the question, what do you want to be when you grow old, which was already back in September, a year ago now. At some point when we kept repeating it, other people began to share it as well. And then we got it back from different places. And then you make this little ripple that you have in mind when you make a game or when you propose a project. Because I can tell this, and I can tell this to you, but I actually hope that you think about this question and that you maybe ask it to your friends when you have a dinner or something, and then more and more and more, because within the social structures or within social design, that's actually where you're going for, because I can't reach everybody. So I need you actually to reach more people and more people and more people. So we have this game now. We made 800, we produced 800 of them because Actiz was very happy with the project, which was great. And they sent it out to all the new, I don't know the English word of this, wethouders. Eldermen, thank you. The eldermen of care that were chosen back in March, and they gave it to all the people that are a member of Actiz, so all the elderly houses and all the also home care and all the other people that are of all organizations that are structured within it. And what is really nice at this moment is that they started to play it now also in neighborhoods. So the coming week again, Ruli, one of the chairmen of an elderly house in Drenthe, she has organized to play this in all the 10 neighborhoods within the city that they have the elderly house. Also to just start thinking about it, but also to have just a different conversation about elderly care, because at this point people complain, have worries or have something else, but she figured, okay, no, we need to have a different kind of conversation. And we need to have a more conversation of what everybody can do, not what we can do for you, not what you can do for us, but what we can do as a collective. When this news also reached us, it made us very happy. Because then as a designer, you don't have to be there anymore. You made something and it's just there out in the world, and then you hope that this ripple that you kind of created only becomes bigger and bigger. And for us, we could have never done it without the What If Lab, and I think within the frame of the What If Lab, this is actually also a really great result. So I think we made each other very happy with this project. Thank you. Does anybody have a question? Yes.
Do you have more examples of similar empathic projects?
Sorry?
Do you have more examples on empathic design?
Do I have more examples of empathic design? Yeah, I think actually there.
In your projects?
Yes. I think what's interesting about the word empathic and also about solidarity, it is about how can you feel or how can you place yourself in somebody else's shoes or see it from their point of view. And I think, so in that sense, we're kind of in between information and social design. Because every time we try to bring it back to, okay, if we're here together, can we understand the same thing? Because we as a studio really believe that if we can understand the same thing, we can help each other better. So in that sense, we saw also more and more within like all those kinds of projects coming back to, okay, do we actually understand from each other what we're saying? So let's start with that and then see how further we can jump. Like the project that I showed, the one about care within sexual abuse or the one about dyslexia are more projects that are driven from the studio, but we also apply them within when a company comes to us. For instance, the province of Brabant has every 7 years a renewal of their whole company and their whole interior, and they learned from that every time all the employees are not very happy. What they did now is they did a big research just before COVID, and then all the results were made in this beautiful report during COVID, and now everything is different. So all the wishes that all the employers had before COVID, they don't have anymore now, but they already started rechanging their building and their whole interior upon what upon what the report said just before COVID. So then they also asked us, okay, can you maybe help us so that we can understand each other again and that we can still look at this report, see how life is now different, but also see what we can still actually use from what we have collected before, because they're still the same people. They still also want to work at home, and they still also want to work in the company, and they still also want to be in contact with each other, but just everything else feels different. So there we kind of did the same. So are we speaking about the same things? Do you recognize still things, but maybe then in different places? And how can we then, from that starting point, start talking again? So that's kind of more methodology also that we kind of are using now within our practice and within all the topics that we're working on. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, great. Then I think I was really clear. Then thanks a lot for being here and listening. It was really nice to also be able to think about this project again and to see, okay, what was actually, well, I wouldn't say innovation aspect of it, but what was actually the result and what was actually coming out of it now once it's really finished. So thank you and have a really nice evening.
Presentation. That was all very inspiring. I suggest we have drinks afterwards at the front of the restaurant, at the bar, and carry on the conversation about this. You're also welcome to stay for dinner at the meetup table, where we offer a meal for everyone who came to Innovation Café for €17.50. Tonight it's a pasta puttanesca made by our chef, who next week we are back again. We have Guy Barsinar here talking about how negligible objects could be brought into attention a little bit more. For now, I wish you a nice evening. So.